Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ahead of the Curve. Actually, it's our 1-year anniversary today. And to celebrate our 1-year anniversary, we have decided to bring back on our very first guest, Berto Mora. Berto, welcome back.
Hey, Geoffrey. Thanks for having me, man. This is awesome. Thank you very much for having me. And can't believe it's been 1 year. I remember the last time I was here, I didn't really know what I was talking about. And 1 year later, here we are, so that's awesome. Thanks for having me, and congrats on the 1 year. And yeah, you've been putting out a lot of awesome interviews, and I try to make them all, but it's impossible because you have so many, but it's super cool. I really enjoy listening to all of them, and I'm happy to be one of the speakers.
It's kind of crazy, actually, looking back at it, that we are now, I was talking to Susie this morning, and just kind of looking back that we've done basically an episode consistently every week of the year, minus Thanksgiving and Christmas. But I also did 2 pre-recorded episodes as well with Phil Galler from Lux Machina and Laura Frank talking about framework. So this is literally I think the 53rd episode of Ahead of the Curve.
Wow.
So yeah, it's kind of incredible to be looking back on it now a year later and see how many different guests and how diverse things have been and kind of what we've all been through over the course of the last year. And it's going to be really interesting to dig into a bit of the discussion about what you've been up to this past year since the first time that you're on the show. Because I remember our format was a little bit different back then. We kind of started off doing more presentation style and working it to be more informative. And then as things progressed and evolved, I kind of shifted it to be more conversational and make it kind of more circle bar-like. So I just wanted to kind of change the direction that the show was going. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to have you back in this format.
Yeah, no, this is great. Yeah, I remember the first time I was on here, this was, I guess, the beginning of Corona. I can't remember exactly, but I just remember, everyone was so excited, 2020, things are going to be amazing. I was really excited about what I was doing, and at the time I was doing a lot of research of virtual production and real-time technologies, and even before that I was working on a lot of R&D stuff internally, and somehow, some way, all of that stuff that I was doing in the pre-R&D phase became really popular in this year, 2021. And later in the year of 2020, which is pretty incredible. Spending all that time R&Ding and figuring out what the next best thing. Unfortunately, Corona kind of made that possible. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride. Earlier we were talking about time, and it's weird because time doesn't really exist anymore. It's like we're in this vortex of time. We don't even know where we're at.
Yeah, it's been definitely challenging to keep track of everything these days. Everything has been super fast, but at the same time very slow. And trying to keep on top of everything has been quite the challenge for sure. So Berto, out of talking about virtual production, and that's kind of been the main focus that you've been working on over the last year. Going back to our conversation, a year ago we were talking about the ideas behind virtual production. Things had just started to come into play, into focus as a workable workflow. Jobs were not, I don't think were really there at that time. The first Fortnite concert was happening, and everything was still very, very much in that kind of preliminary experimental phase. So in the transition over the course year, what have you learned, and what has worked and what hasn't?
I mean, I've learned a lot, and I've also learned that I don't know much because it's such a vast industry, and from my background, I did study a little film, I did study a little computer science, and kind of putting all that together you open up all these doors of different industries, and you start learning that you don't know much about it, right? So, between first, last March and today, I spent a lot of time researching, what are the use cases of the technology, where would we use this technology, and how to apply that, right? Seems like I think we've lost you, Geoffrey.
Oh, this is. You know what? Oh my God! I just realized that I'm not even plugged in.
But yeah, so learning a lot. At first I was kind of exploring the technology and understanding how the technology worked, and today I'm actually learning how to implement the technology in these jobs, right? Whether it's a commercial shoot or a real-time shoot, there's different aspects and elements of the technology that you use for those certain projects. But yeah, I think today, I'm still learning. There's still a lot that I don't know, and it's exciting to learn more about that and implement new technologies into our workflow. So that's been really incredible.
That's awesome. It's really interesting to see the change and the difference of the ways things have kind of evolved, over the course of the last year, and bringing things that may have been more hypothetical or theoretical at that time and be able to put them into practice, I think is really interesting to be able to figure out what has worked, what hasn't worked. Some of the workflows that have been basically coming out, we've been seeing radical changes in the real-time technology and different platforms kind of adopting, I guess, these workflows and helping make them better and change the way that the work is done. So it's been quite the year, to say the least, for so many different things.
Yeah, totally. It seems like, in the beginning of all this, people, like you said, it was a lot of prelim, like people were testing the waters. A lot of people were trying things out and seeing what stuck, what didn't. I think a lot of people in the beginning were a little, not scared, but they didn't really want to go in and do virtual production or whatever that may be. But you see now more and more people have been inspired by a lot of the projects that people have been doing, and now more and more people are testing the waters with this virtual production technology, which is really awesome for us. And we've seen a lot of studios investing, a lot of companies, software developing companies that create the tools. They've been getting a lot of investment behind all this, and yeah, it's awesome to see that there's a big backing behind this to achieve this new way of showing this new medium to showcase people's projects.
Yeah, absolutely. What have been some of the more exciting things that you've seen come out of it over the course of the last year?
For me, the most exciting thing, aside from everyone's projects, there's so many incredible projects. Every project you watch is like, oh, that thing is awesome, or that element is great. I think the most exciting thing for me is just more people being excited about it, right? More people really wanting to adopt the technology, more people wanting to be a part of it. I think that is the most exciting part, because that just means that it can actually keep going as a medium that we can still work in, hopefully beyond 2021. I'm always gonna, I'm a big Disguise user. A lot of my XR work is based out of their technology, and very excited about what they've been doing, because they've made everything a little bit simpler. Obviously, XR is not simple. There's so many things that have to go right in order for it to work. Where people think it happens with a click of the button, but really that's not the case. You still have to put in work to make it work perfectly. So very excited about that. I'm also excited about they just released, or they just started talking about it, and it's their cluster rendering program or system, where you can now take the XR branch of Disguise and really use end display with it, right? And they're building like a layer on top of it, so you don't have to go in there and build your config files and do all this complicated stuff that you have to do just with NDisplay to get it working. Now, any user that uses the Disguise platform with practice and the right documentation, they can actually do a lot of these projects that were pretty hard to do before. You know, I remember last year there was not many people doing NDisplay, and now today everyone's doing NDisplay. But even today, you know, you see a lot of issues that are coming along. People are still having issues on how they're setting it up, and that it shouldn't be like that, right? Like, it should be much simpler to do something like that that has so much buzz around it, right? I think we've lost you, Jeff.
That's kind of the way complicated. Oh, am I gone? Did I fall off again?
Yeah, I think you're a little fuzzy on the video. Feedback. You're muted. It's funny because, you know,
hey,
with all
the
yeah, we can hear you. I can hear you now. Yep.
Your headphones set.
All right, we're gonna having difficulties, folks.
Yeah, this is awesome. I mean, you know, it's crazy because, like, we're in 2021 today, and we do extremely complicated extended reality work with, you know, all this technology, and you know, video conferences are still an issue today. But that's always, you know.
For sure. Okay, so we've
Yeah,
got 3 times 2.
Challenge for sure. Okay, so we've got 3 times 2.
There we go. No.
Why is it still your output screen?
Unmute.
Okay. I think I'm back now.
I believe you are as well.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah, no, that's always great, right? You have to have one of those, at the very least one. If you don't,
Well, you know what's been crazy is we've been again a year in, and with the 1 year, of course, anniversary edition, this is the first like major technical hiccup I've had since we've started the show, which is kind of crazy. But you know,
hey, I'm just happy it happened with me. You know, I feel.
You are so welcome for being a special guest today and getting the special treatment with all of these wonderful little technical glitches.
Yeah. We're just fine. You know, today is a day of technical glitches. You can see I'm in my room. I have a day off for once. That's awesome. All last 2 months, I've been literally working nonstop on projects. We have a couple projects coming out, which is really, really exciting, and really happy to be, you know, to be off and have this conversation with you. So,
yeah, it's been great. It's absolutely been great. And here's one of our main followers. He's asking, 1 year into our workflows or your workflows, what is the main skill set that you see lacking the most in the current pool of technicians or techs? Great question.
Yeah, I think at the very least for me, from what I've learned is, you know, you can learn all your tech, you can understand the workflow and all of that, but at the end of the day, you have to make sure that the production as a whole understands what you're doing, right? There's a lot of this stuff that, you know, I jump into and doing these projects, and, you know, for example, if you do a video shoot, everyone wants to operate super quick, super fast. They want to get everything done. And then they realize all the discrepancies that happen within the softwares or the technology, and they kind of aren't too happy about it because they're like, well, it should be working like this, but it doesn't, right? So I think one of the lacking skills is, you know, having someone on site that understands the technology and can actually, you know, explain how the technology works with the entire production. So when I first would go into these productions, I was like, oh, I'm just like I'm an add-on to the workflow or to the production. I'm going to stay out of the way a little bit and let them operate, and then I'll just do my real-time stuff over here and have them work with it. And then I realized that by doing that, you know, you end up seeing a lot of issues because the technology is not being used properly. And I started, you know, seeing a lot of my projects, like, I was like, there's got to be something better. Like, what can I do to make it better? So I realized that I actually have to go into these productions. I have to literally gather everyone together and explain to them what we're doing, how the technology works, why it works the way it's supposed to work, and why it doesn't work based on what they're trying to do, right? And as long as you do that, you know, client management, and let them understand why they can and can't do things, I think that's the thing that's lacking the most. Because, you know, you get a lot of people going and they're like, yeah, I can calibrate, you know, like calibration is one thing. Like once you get it up, that's one thing. But once you start doing content and everything else, that's a whole different beast, right? Like there's endless amounts of things that you can do on that end. And yeah, just really getting together and you know, explaining it to people as you're doing these productions, how it works. Because if you don't do that, you know, everyone's going to want to go 100% full speed ahead based on how they normally operate, and things aren't going to go so well.
It's interesting that you bring up client expectations, because I think that's kind of been one of the kind of pressing issues with so many different people and companies for years and years and years. I remember, you know, doing a lot of design work for clients back when I was doing production design, and meeting those clients, and even Bob Boniel actually posted something on this not too long ago. But, you know, being able to meet those client expectations and setting those client expectations has always been a challenge from all kinds of different areas, all the way from design and coming up with the ideas of what you want to create, or what kind of environment, or what they expect you to be able to deliver, all the way to actually delivering it on site, and, you know, having the client, you know, basically making sure that those client expectations are covered. But for me, I've always found another challenge is making sure that the client expectations stay consistent. And I found so many times that, you know, you might pitch something and they agree on it, and then you get on job site and then they change their mind, you know, and those are the times that I find are very, very difficult, because the clients in a lot of cases don't understand why things might be so hard to adapt and change, to go from one shot or to go from one setting to another, or even to move like something really small, you know, that might be really difficult to change at that time, and the client doesn't understand why. And I think that's one of the things that I find has kind of been that tell-old tale that we've always been pressed against, is educating the client as to how these things work and what the limitations are, and, you know, helping them have a better understanding of how much time it takes to be able to make an adjustment or make a change, or, you know, be able to do something. And, you know, real time has definitely helped us, I think, a lot, to be able to make adjustments and changes, but some things still take a lot of time.
Yeah, of course. Like, totally. Like, you know, like if you're building a city and someone tells you to build a whole entire new block on site before about to shoot, right? Like, you still get those requests. And I'm just like, I can't do that. We either do this or we do that. You know, you have to figure out a way. Like, for me, it's like, I never say no, but I give them options, right? Because they don't want to hear no. They want to be like, well, how can we solve this issue, right? We can either do it like this or we can do it like that. This way is going to take you long. It's going to take you much longer to get. This way it can get you the desired effect, but it's not going to be 100%, right? So really, yeah, client expectation is the biggest thing. And one of the things that I love about this situation is that you're essentially in a black box, and you kind of know everything about that box, and your client really doesn't sure. So there's some clients out there that, do their research and understand how it works, and at a very top level. But yeah, it's being able to understand the technology in a way where you can really explain all the situations to get you out of that trouble where the client is trying to make you do something that doesn't really make sense to do, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a hard thing to tackle, because you're not, at that point, you're not dealing with just the technology part. Really, you're dealing with the personality or the person part of it. And
yeah,
I've from all of my experience and being in the industry, one of the biggest thing that always comes back is educating and training, and that goes for the people that are on site doing the work all the way to the client, because the customer doesn't understand what it takes to be able to produce their event or be able to produce their shoot. Then they're just gonna get frustrated, and they're not gonna understand what, the limitations to things, and to why they can't do something, or why something cannot be done quickly.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, we recently finished a project where we're doing all these crazy jib shots, and the video director, he was going crazy, right? Like, he's just doing all these crazy swoops and amazing moves, but the technology wasn't able to keep up, right? So he was getting really, really frustrated because that wasn't working. And I was getting frustrated because he was getting frustrated that he wasn't getting the effect that he wanted, right? And I had to make sure that these things work properly. So, I literally went home, and I thought about it the whole night, and I was like, God, like, when I go in there tomorrow, like, what do I have to do to solve this situation? So I went up to the video director, I went up to the jib ops, I went up to the camera guys, and I was like, hey guys, we need to have a quick tutorial in session on how you guys need to work together, because the camera director would be like, oh, give me this huge sweeping thing, and then all of a sudden he would do it, and I would talk to the jib guy, don't do that because it's not going to look great, and then he's like, well, you got to talk to the video guy, or to the video director. So it becomes this whole cycle, right? And eventually I realized, I was like, I have to put these people together. We have to discuss the technology, how it should work and how they should use it, because if not, this whole production is not going to be great, right? Everyone's going to be frustrated the whole time. So as soon as I did that, right, things just got so much better, because they understood the reasons why, when they went fast, why it would break, right? They were able to get a little bit of education. So I think that's very important. Yeah, just educating them around what the technology is, right? And I think, like, one of the things too is a lot of people are, a little scared to let their clients know that, right? Because, like, oh, they're the client. But I'm not doing it because I'm trying to be the guy that's telling you what to do. I'm trying to do it so that you can actually understand how it works, so we can get a better outcome of what we're trying to do, right? And really, I think that, like, going back to Jorge or George's question, is those are the things, right? That's what everyone really that I see in these productions lack.
Yeah, that's the interesting part about it as well, is there's been a number of productions I've also worked on where you get really, really talented people on site that are really, really good at their jobs, or they're really good at designing things, but they're not, they're more introverted than others might be. And it's interesting, you need to have the right personality, I think, and personality types that are working together as a team, that can work to each other's strengths, and also be able to relay that information back in a very cohesive way back to their customers or their clients that they're working with. And even other teams on site, like, I can't tell you the number of productions that I've gone on site and worked with where it's the first time all these different departments have worked together. You might be working with companies that you've never worked with or never heard of before. Yeah. And, you're now having to work together as one centralized team to make this whole production come to life and make it work. Mm-hmm. And if the communication factor isn't properly there, or if you can't communicate, what your part of the job is properly, it can really turn into a real big mess quickly. And it's definitely poses a challenge. So it's kind of interesting that we've kind of moved the direction of the conversation to the more of the personal aspect. But it's so true. I mean, it's just like, it's one of the most difficult parts, I think, with any production is not necessarily the technology, but what the technology is capable of doing and how quickly it can achieve it. And then how much back-end work is done. I mean, you know, people also don't realize how much pre-production work is done, even in real-time settings, like setting up a scene in Unreal. For those of you that have been working in Unreal over this past year, it can get really, really crazy and really in-depth when you're dealing with, especially when you start plopping in logic and logic-based elements into a scene, and you're really getting deep into blueprints programming. You're not going to be able to fix something like on the fly, you know? Yep. It could take hours to be able to change something or fix something.
Yeah, it gets really, really complicated, right? You have your scene, your geometry, that's one thing, but then your logic, right? A lot of people are now, that's the next thing. Like, how can we make this interactive, right? Like that's what everyone wants to do is like, yeah, the whole XR thing, I think people are,
yeah, this is super cool, but now we want to be able to play with it.
Yeah, exactly. And now we want to get creative, right? Like now we want to do cool things with it. And I think that's where we're at today is, you know, everyone coming up with a new technique or a new interaction of some sort that no one's ever seen before. And those are my favorite things, right? Like that's what I like to see is like, oh, did you see that project because of this thing? I won't go like, oh, did you see that project and check out that cool content that they did? Because at the end of the day, everyone is doing cool content. Everyone is doing XR today, but what puts you apart from everyone else, right? And that's really what we try to do at Alva now is try to figure out new ways. I mean, that's been our whole wave that we've operated the entire time is like, how do we implement new technology into the entertainment industry, right? How do we use things that people don't ever really care to do, but we want to do it because it's fun, right? And we want to hopefully make some money off of that. I don't know whether it's
you know what I love about it too is just from the background of from where you guys come from, always makes like I always thought that was the most awesome thing. I'm like, these guys come from working with, you know, Mythbusters and stuff like, you know, the Mythbusters gang were always trying all kinds of new crazy things.
Yeah,
and they were never afraid. Like that was one of the TV series actually I used to love to watch. Because I was like, okay, they're not afraid of anything. They're just like winging it. And even the production, the way the production was shot was much different than a lot of the shows back in those days. What was that, like 10 years ago? So
yeah, I think it was around for 11 seasons or so.
Yeah, it was around for quite a long time.
But yeah, that was, you know, a big inspiration as well as, you know, working on, you know, Mythbusters and, you know, I mean, people were like, oh, blowing stuff up, right? But at the end of the day, there was a lot of experimentation that would happen and a lot of pre-production to go on site to do these projects, right? And that was real time, which was awesome, right? I mean, all the simulations were real, nothing was rendered, right? And that was,
we are really going to blow this thing up. It's not no visual effects, nothing. We're going to blow it up.
It was incredible, right? And just seeing, you know, productions like that, how they operate was, you know, very inspirational. And I don't know how I mean, I know how I got into all this, but that definitely helped get me to this point in time. Yeah, fun times, Mythbusters.
Well, I guess kind of bringing it back, like back when I was in college, I got really into special effects. But in pyrotechnics, and working in Canada and trying to become a special effects pyrotechnician in Canada was extremely difficult to do because you had to apprentice under another pyrotechnician that had a license level above the one that you were working in that class. So you'd always have to apprentice under a different level of pyrotechnician to work your way up. And, you know, it was really fascinating back then the ways that visual effects were done, you know, say back in the late 90s, early 2000s, to the way that those effects are being created now.
Yeah.
Like back then you had to create practical effects, you know, like things were really expensive and you were setting up for days before a shoot, and everything had to be done, you know, very specifically to capture that shot. But now you can go back with a lot of our real-time products and you can create and simulate like amazing effects and explosions and simulations that, you know, are photorealistic and that are just as good in some cases and much safer in a lot of others than they were back in the days.
Funny you speak of pyrotechnics. I was really interested in fireworks simulations as well, and at one point I found a software called Fireworks 7. I don't know if you ever heard of that one. And it was like a fireworks simulator, and you would download it. You would simulate all your fireworks, your show, and then you would literally program it. And you would once you program it, you connected it to all their like hardware to actually do fireworks shows. It was awesome. I really wanted to do that for some weird reason.
I think fireworks always fascinated everybody when they were kids, right?
Yeah.
So Bob, I wanted to say thank you for the happy anniversary wish. That was awesome. It's great to be here a year later and still be going strong. I wanted to touch base. Danny has just posed a question. Do you see XR being used with live music shows in the near future? And Berto is the perfect person to ask that question to.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. You know, XR currently today is made based on one perspective of a camera, right? So it would only work from one point of view. There's a recent thing that I saw a couple weeks ago about how Brompton is doing multi-perspectives on one LED camera. That is really odd to me because you're going to get a lot of like, you know, a lot of motion, a lot of craziness. I mean, the way that I do see XR working is I've been really lately. I've been really big into. I've been wanting to do this demo with this company where they're doing they have stereoscopic LED screens. Yep. And something that I would really love to do is, you know, being able to do stereoscopic.
Be able to do stereoscopic XR.
So based on one perspective, right? So essentially you would have stereoscopic LED screens and have people wear their glasses. Obviously it wouldn't be from their from one perspective wouldn't work for everyone, but you at the very least can get that kind of effect. I don't know if, you know, I just don't know if you know XR is going to be used in events today, but you know I do believe that going back to George's question before Danny's, you know, we're going to see more AR. I mean, already before we went to the pandemic, we were already working on AR stuff for music festivals, and we're going to do on the cloud. That's when we're going to see more like AR based either mobile phones or some sort of headset that might be, you know, some Apple product that might come out in the near future. Don't know. But yeah, as of now, you know, I think XR will probably exist more in the realm of the virtual production, whether it's used for a very expensive music video or backdrops for a film. You know, I definitely see that industry using it more than when we go back to live. Because when we go back to live, no one's going to care about the internet. You know, everyone's going to want to go online, or everyone's going to want to go on to the concerts and all that stuff. So
yeah, experience them in real life and in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wanted to put my take on there as well. Like, there's some interesting tech that's been around for a few years. When I was working with Christy, right before I ended up leaving the company, we were experimenting with some tech that was based on really high frame rate, really high frame rate video. And the whole idea was that you could use active glasses that were tuned into basically every fourth frame. So you could do 4 discrete channels of video through the same basically display running at that time, and each pair of glasses would be tuned into a different channel that was basically based off of a frame offset. So you could literally be playing 4 different people could be playing 4 different video games on the same display at the same time with those display offsets. So that kind of tech might be really interesting moving into the XR space moving forward. If you can actually frame sync high frame rate camera system to a high frame rate LED wall, which it would have to be extremely high frame rate. We're talking like 240 hertz basically at that time, and locking the frame rate from the camera into the LED wall so that the frames that are pushed to the LED wall can be picked up by the camera, but might not be visible by the audience. So you're kind of dual purposing the same display for both an XR based application and live at the same time. But
yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think that's definitely where the technology is going to be headed. I mean, one of my dreams is to have the same technology but with IR, right? So if we can do like an IR emission based out of the LED wall at an interval, so that way you can actually use that as a way to key out different subjects within the XR stage or whatever that may be, right? A lot of people are talking about the green environment, right? So we can have occlusion and things like that we can walk in and around people, or around objects, I should say. So I think that's what will be really fascinating. And yeah, speaking of the alternate frame stuff, also polarization, right? Like having different types of polarization. That's how the LED wall, the stereoscopic LED wall works. Is you can have you can do two different frames at once. If they're stereo, it would be 3D. But now if they're not stereo, you can have different polarizations for each camera, and they would pick up a different scene, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's really interesting to see where everything is going. And I think as those higher frame rate technologies kind of come into play, I think we'll start to see different techniques of being able to repurpose different types of technologies together. For me, I think that as AR comes in, and I've mentioned this in the past, some past episodes, but as AR really starts to come into play, and we start to see consumer-based glasses, and depending on the bandwidth of the application and the connectivity between the glasses and the device, I can't see a world where live events will not be taking over some of that tech and being able to put different types of imagery or overlays inside the audience's tech or inside their glasses as they're viewing an event. And I think that it's going to open a whole new creative aspect for the way that we engage with the world around us in a lot of ways. Like just thinking from a real life perspective, I'd love to be able to put on an AR pair of glasses and walk outside of my house. And I live in an area called Audubon Park, where we've got a lot of beautiful birds and wildlife, and be able to look at a bird and it pop up the information inside of a lens saying, this is the type of bird, this is their habitat, stuff like that. Like right now it's like snap a picture, Google it.
Process it. Yeah. No, I think we're getting really, really close to that. I do believe the technology already exists to do that. Maybe not the headset, right? But all the software to enable that kind of stuff. That all exists today. But it's when are we going to get to the point where people will accept a headset, like an AR glass, just like your phone, right? Like how we got to the point where we accepted a cellular device to be in our pocket every day. How long is it going to take for human beings to actually accept that we have to have AR glasses to navigate around the world, right? And I think that we're doing that right now based on the internet, based on your phone, right? But why do I have to pull out my phone to look for directions when I can like look and go in a different direction?
It'll wayfind you and tell you where you got to go. I think the adoption process is going to be about the same as it was for a phone, to be honest with you, maybe even less. Like we moved from main cellular phone technologies to smartphones to where we are now within a decade.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I think the people,
you put that into perspective and you start putting AR. AR glasses. A company called North came out with the first set of consumer grade AR glasses like 2 years ago now, I think, or 3 years ago when they first released their first pair of consumer grade AR glasses. So things are going to get refined, and Apple is supposed to release, I think, some sort of AR product at some point this year. So we'll have to see, how that all comes out. And speaking of stuff like that, like on our side, inside of Seventh Sense, we have a closed captioning product that you can do closed captioning inside of a pair of the Epson's AR glasses. So audience members can jump on a ride or can go into an experience, and if they need closed captioning, they can grab a pair of AR glasses, shove them on, and we deliver all that through a Android application. So,
but what if you get to the next point, right, where you now don't need closed captioning, and you can have deepfakes actually interpret their language into a language that you can understand? And
that's Babelfish, man. You're talking Babelfish.
There was this funny, there's this idea that I had a while back, and maybe it wasn't my idea, but I thought of something where it was, with all this AI deepfake stuff, right? You now need people to dub different languages and different captionings for films based on, whatever language they're in. And you can literally do that with AI today. You can do a deepfake, give it the language that you want it, have the lips move in whatever way they need to move for that language, and it will be that actor that did that movie in whatever language you did it. But you can now do it for every language, right? I don't know. That's what I'm waiting for. I don't want to read anymore. Can I just,
I use my wife for that, by the way. She's my AI. I basically have her read to me.
Nice. Bedtime story.
She's looking at me and she's shaking her head. I don't think she really knows what to do with me, but yeah, I think story time is great for everybody. It soothes the soul.
Mm-hmm.
So Chet, I just wanted to say hey to Chet. He's been viewing again almost weekly, and he said he's still hoping for closed captioning, though that doesn't need AR for a live event.
What I'm really hoping for is Chet Miller to be on Ahead of the Curve.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really want to hear more about what he's doing. I think, Chet, you're still over at BYV, I think?
Yeah, Chet's over at BYV. So what do you say, Chet? You up for the challenge?
I would love to hear more about what you guys are working over there. And I just want to, I've seen some demos of some of the awesome stuff you guys have been doing. So want to know more about it.
We actually had Drew Atienza on not too long
recently. I did see that. I unfortunately didn't see that one, which maybe that's where all that information was.
But it would be good to have Chet on anyway, just to Chet's an awesome all-around guy, and he's got a vast amount of experience as well, so it'd be cool to check that out. Well, Berto, I just wanted to thank you so much, man, for being on with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure, technical difficulties and all. But hey, that's kind of part of the program, right?
Part of the production. You get one.
Thankfully, thankfully we're the producer, so the only person I have to yell at is really myself. About all of the technical difficulties, but thankfully there's no client expectations that I have to meet.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, thanks for having me, and definitely looking forward to Chet coming on and hearing what he has to say. And I gotta say, I learned a lot from Chet. He's a guy that taught me a lot. A lot of the early on industry people, and somehow I managed to learn as well. So it's awesome.
All right, Chet, you've been called out, dude. You're gonna have to join me now. That's pretty much it. So we'll book you a date.
Yeah,
we'll book you a date in the spot. So just for a catch up next week, we're going to be bringing back Velo. So Velo is going to be on with us next week. Finally, hopefully he doesn't have any dental emergencies or anything, but it'll be cool to check out some of the work that he's done. He's been working on some really cool projects, especially recently. So we'll be talking about some of the work that he's been doing and his firm Excite Labs. So make sure you guys come back and check that out next week. And as long as we can, we're going to keep on kind of pushing forward with these shows for as long as we possibly can. But it's basically thanks to you guys for supporting us and keeping things moving forward. So as I say, everyone, thank you so much for being part of it. thank you, Berto, once again. It's been great having you as a guest again for our first year anniversary. And to all of you watching, stay ahead of the curve, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.